reporting live for Primeur magazine from the e-IRG workshop in Bratislava. And we're here with Peter Wittenburg, who just gave a presentation here at the workshop. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you tell a little bit about yourself?
Well, what shall I say? So I'm studied in Berlin, early computer science and pattern recognition. That's my background. And then after some intermediate steps, I joined or had the chance to build the technology and methodology department of the Max Planck Institute for Psycholinguistics in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, which I stayed with for 30 years. And in the middle of all this work, I got involved in various research infrastructure building very early. First within the Max Planck Society, bringing people together from different institutes working on similar issues. So we early had the issue of the challenge to exchange data and tools and so forth, right? And at a certain moment, this all, evolved so that we thought we should bring not just Max Planck Society institutes together, but create an infrastructure in Europe and our domain. So that was the birth of Clarin. We got together with a few colleagues in Europe. We started building the Clarin research infrastructure. So then I was involved in UDAT, building the UDAT data infrastructure, so across disciplines. And as you can see, I went abstracted away and away from the smaller level of interaction to the larger level of interaction. And RDA is in fact the end point here, so where you have a global interaction, not building a data infrastructure anymore, specifying, say, the connectors, the APIs and the protocols and so forth, right? So doing this. So that's a bit my
okay, so in RDA, that's a Research Data Alliance.
Data Alliance.
Yeah, the big organization with over 4,000 people.
Yes, so there are 4,500 members, but you have to. So the important point is to see, how much is the real engagement. Members, you subscribe and then, it doesn't mean so much. But for me, it's important to see that there are between 400 and 700 people in the plenaries, and they work, right, mostly. And another point is to see, of course, that the younger generation is taking this up. That's for me the most important point, since the young people, they have to, build the machinery. And so if people like me do it, well, that's fine, but there's no perspective. So the young people do now this and build working groups and interest groups, and that's good.
Okay, and you were presenting here something which is called GEDE or GEDE or
whatever you like.
Whatever you like. Yeah.
What does it mean? GEDE.
Yeah.
So a group of European data experts, I think it's called. Okay. And it's just an acronym as so many others. And it wants to express, of course, that as Mark said, you need to do a lot of mediation. And what we wanted to bring together with GEDE, as the name says, those experts that work in Clarin, in Elixir, in Embry, and so forth, and the different disciplines, infrastructure, initiatives in the various disciplines, bring those two together to interact about RDA output, but not only RDA, that could also be output from World Wide Web Consortium or what have you. But also to see how this could be applied to their problems, but also listen, of course, to their problems and take them up first in the discussion in GEDE, and then maybe put it on the table of RDA to build a working group or interest group or so. Right? So GEDE is for me an interaction platform, and we discussed this in a very hot way. How do you say? Yesterday morning. Since there are so many initiatives already, is there really a need for another initiative, mediation initiative? People were positive, although we have, all of us, all our question marks. Right? And things are changing so quickly.
Yeah. So, is there some relation with e-infrastructures in general and also with the e-IRG? Or
well, the impulse to come together here came from Sverker. And
Yeah, the
other
chairman
colleagues,
of the e-IRG.
yes,
Yeah.
and the other colleagues in the ERG. So the impulse came not from us, since we wanted to have a discussion, based on standards and as I said, and challenging topics in the infrastructures, in the research infrastructures. So at a certain moment I got the request from Sverker. Couldn't we get together, since Sverker, of course, is interested to see people who work on the other side of the road, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the research infrastructure, potential users. And normally, that's what I know, because normally you get, in ERG, you get the people who talk about policy at policy level.
Yeah.
But you don't get the discussion per se about, the practitioner level. That's a different type of
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah.
And so that's probably the motivation from Sverker and his colleagues. And we were grateful to accept that opportunity and also organize our first face-to-face meeting here. So we spent most of the time talking about the GEDE issue, but we also spent some time this morning on discussing the relationship between the practitioners and the research infrastructures and e-IRG,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the level of discussion about e-infrastructures, as we call them in Europe. And there were quite some harsh comments, on service. So the service orientation in principle is supported, but my colleagues, so I was silent basically, but my colleagues expressed, several of them, that they talk about services, but still it doesn't really match, since the services are partly not well supported, partly they're oversold, and so the users then want to use them as they were sold. They find out, oh, that's not reality, and so forth, right? So not blame anyone, but there are these mismatches, right? And they will probably express this tomorrow morning or so.
Yeah.
So it's good, I think, for the ERG to listen to these practitioner level, to what their views are and their comments are. And this is not a GEDE statement, since GEDE is not. GEDE doesn't have the mission to make statements about services from e-infrastructures. That's not our mission, right? So we have to be careful. It's statements which we discussed, where in some areas people agree, and maybe in other areas people maybe just present their personal opinion.
Okay. I think you mentioned one technical, well, it's a technical thing, the persistent identifiers for information. Is that something you can share with us?
Well, I think it's time that ERG, if they want to not just make generic policy statement, but have an impact, and so far that something concrete happens, I think it's time that ERG raises their voice here. So what you see in many labs, increasingly, but more labs, is that people use the handle system. And there are different IT systems around and so forth, and for different purposes. But for data, citing data, referring to data in our software and so forth, to make data science reproducible, people more and more start using handles for the daily work, and DOIs, which are also handles, for data publications. And what you see on the other side of the road is that the handle system is now in the hands of a Swiss foundation, which is neutral, as the label of being neutral. Swiss foundation, and the Swiss foundation is now governed by an international board of experts. So there's Chinese, and there's someone from Africa, and there's an American, and there's now in future there's a Russian, and there's a European. So you see there, and the representative of the International DOI Foundation. So it's a board of experts from which you can say they will take care that the handle system is in good hands and will develop. so that there's a stability over the next years. So it's not anymore a system which is owned by an American institution, which would never be accepted by other regions.
Yeah.
It's now a Swiss foundation run by an international body. So I think it's time that we, like decades ago, where people agreed on TCP/IP, in fact, IP number system with some protocols around it. Let's all use it as a basic, right? And then you can do something different here and there. And I think it's time, if I see the development, it's time now that we come to a similar agreement and say, look, there's an infrastructure for PIDs, it's robust, and we have to do a bit more to maintain it. And I think in Europe, at this moment we have one of the root nodes, which is in Göttingen, but why not have a root node in Italy or in Spain or whatsoever, so that there is a good distribution, which has which would have two effects. One is you create more redundancy. So if something goes out of function, the rest of the system works on high performance. It just keeps going on. And the other is, of course, the national pride. Like with the DNS system, so we all have our national nodes, which is a natural, which is quite natural that you have these. So I think it's time now that we come to agreement to support this system for everyone who is there, who wants to use it, independent whether it's industry or research, independent of the discipline. And if you want to do something different, do it. But then you have to take care that it's persistent. You see, that's the game. So, okay. So GEDE will continue talking about this PID stuff, as you heard in the first, as we call it, bundle, and we'll come to statements. But I think at policy level, I think it's time for e-IRG to also make a step.
Okay. Thank you very much for this interview.
You're welcome.
For Primeur magazine, this was Adam reporting.